Today on the Fearless Future podcast, we are talking about who breastfeeding is for. And we're talking about this just on the heels of one of the founders of the Leche League, an international organization, one of its founders at the age of 94, Marian Tompson, resigning from the board due to Leche League's direction, including those who identify as women but are not women, to be part of their programs. That is what we are unpacking today on the Fearless Future podcast. Welcome to the Fearless Future podcast, where your hosts Lisa Canning and Leah Jacobson will explore what the world would look like if women didn't fear pregnancy. Through education, community, and healthcare solutions, Guiding Star Project strives to make this a reality at our physical centers across the United States. Join us. Leah.
Hi.
My goodness. This has been a huge hot topic in the communities that we run in. You know, as a lactation consultant, you've got some strong opinions on this. Why don't we go right ahead and just start by reading her resignation letter? So Marian Tompson, she has just resigned. Read to us what happened.
Yes. All right. This is the exact letter that Marian Tompson issued. So here it is. She sent it out to the leaders of the Leche League. And it starts out, "Dear leaders of the Leche League, I want to share some important news. On November 6, 2024, I resigned from the Leche League International Board of Directors and from the Leche League itself, an organization that has become a travesty of my original intent. From an organization with a specific mission of supporting biological women who want to give their babies the best start in life by breastfeeding them, the Leche League's focus has subtly shifted to include men who, for whatever reason, want to have the experience of breastfeeding, despite no careful long-term research on male lactation and how that may affect the baby. This shift from following the norms of nature, which is the core of mothering through breastfeeding, to indulging the fantasies of adults is destroying our organization. Despite my efforts these past 2 years as a board member, it has become clear that there is nothing I can do to change this trajectory by staying involved. Still, I leave the door open to come back when the Leche League returns to its original mission and purpose. I thank each of you for your years of making this world a healthier and happier place by being there for all mothers needing help with breastfeeding their babies. With much love, Marian Tompson, founder of the Leche League."
Whew. Leah, why is this a big deal?
Well, for me personally, it hits really hard as the founder of a nonprofit organization. I'm like, my organization's, a little over a decade old, but my goodness, I can't even imagine if in 50 years my organization's gone, whoa, like that's just got to be heartbreaking as a founder. So I just feel for Ms. Tompson and her 6 co-founders. I believe there's only 2 still alive, but as a 94-year-old woman to make that statement, things have gone wrong.
We wanted to bring on another voice to today's conversation. So welcome to the Fearless Future podcast, Jordan Paul. Jordan, welcome. We're so happy to have
Thank you.
Anyone who might not know you and your work, can you just introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Yeah. I am Jordan Paul. I'm a Chicago native, but I live in Southwest Florida right now. I have a 5.5-year-old and a 3-year-old, both girls. I just finished nursing my 5.5-year-old on Halloween night. I'm still nursing the 3-year-old. So if anyone understands the emotions, the roller coaster of breastfeeding, it would be me. I've been a Leche League leader actually. January of this year January of 25 will be 2 years. I started attending meetings when my oldest was a month old. So from July of 2019, I was incredibly active in our local chapter. And just in the past 3 years alone, I've donated over 5,000 ounces of breast milk, and that's not anything included prior to my second being born. So I'm incredibly passionate about the bond that's created, the gift that God has given us in being able to breastfeed our children. And I've just kind of gone down a million rabbit holes to learn as much as I can to be a resource to mothers in the community.
I just want to commend you because La Leche League does such incredible work, and you ladies pick up the phone. Like when people,
Yeah.
in the middle of the night, whenever.
Right. Yeah. And it's hard because it's, you know, kind of like when I see someone like get a dog from a breeder, I'm like, wait a second, did you know this? You know, it's like when women want to just go to formula or they just want to give up, they want to do all these things. Like, I want to help. And it's sometimes really hard because, you know, being on the front lines and being there as their first resource, the first person that they reach out to is a lot different than me being in their bedroom in the middle of the night when they're lonely, when those crazy thoughts start to creep in where you're like, I can't do this. I'm alone and it's dark and it hurts. So yeah, it's hard work, but it's so rewarding.
Yeah.
You can't see it, but I'm nursing my infant right now below. Okay, here's her little hand. Here she is.
Ah, perfect.
So, Jordan, what does Marian Tompson's resignation, like, what does this mean to you? Like, how did you feel when you heard it? What's your reaction?
Yeah, so I mean, it just has been less than a week. I think I stumbled upon it. There are so many different avenues to get information as just someone who appreciates the Leche, as a leader, as a chapter leader, as an area. Like, there's just so many directions that I'm bombarded with information. So I saw this, couldn't get my hands on it. I think they've done a really good job. Like, you really have to dig for the letter. So someone private messaged me the letter, and I just wanted to know. I just said, is the stance that we are allowing like a woman who is transitioned to a man to come into the meetings, or are we allowing men to come into these meetings? I have a big problem with that. And a lot of La Leche Leagues are meeting in churches. And I know that our host church would have a very big problem with that. So my immediate reaction was like, well, if this is what they stand for, then like I'm out. If I'm a strong believer, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And I'm not going to get swept up in the whirlwind of emotions and all of these things just to say that I'm part of an organization. If it is not founded on things that I can align with, I'm not going to pull, you know, the blindfold over my eyes and pretend.
Jordan, I think there's a really interesting thing that you just said there was, is this the stance of our organization? I think there's been a lot of confusion among La Leche League leaders is what does our organization believe? What do we stand for? We just saw that they updated their handbook. I have the 2004 version, The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding. And it just came out, looks like 2 weeks ago on Amazon. It's now The Art of Breastfeeding.
Right.
And the language has shifted, but there hasn't really been anything that's come down officially to you as a leader saying you must say this or you must say that. Has it been confusing?
Yeah, it's been confusing, but it's always kind of been the verbiage from La Leche is like, take what you can from the resources that you're given and apply it where it's necessary. And so leaders that I look to as my role models as a newer leader have kind of just been like, you don't really have to deal with it unless someone comes in that niche and you have to, you know, kind of realign your meeting structure. And being in Southwest Florida, I don't anticipate having this type of dilemma, but there are definitely areas where this is the trend of where our sexuality and our gender roles are going. And I just still am not going to be like, well, ignorance is bliss. It didn't happen to me, so it's not happening somewhere else. Like, it's all those little things, those little language changes that if you're not paying close enough attention, you're going to be a part of something that has so drastically drifted from its original stance that you just didn't even realize it was happening. It's those little jabs. And I can't get behind that. I think there's a lot of leaders who feel like I do and are willing to kind of just say, this isn't an organization that I can be a part of anymore. There's still women who need breastfeeding support. And if I can't do it in the official capacity of a La Leche League leader, I'll find a different way.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
You know, it's a question I posed to both of you. You know, are women losing their voice, you know, in spaces like this that are designed to support women? But, you know, how much, I'd be very curious, like how much were women consulted? Like how much were leaders consulted? Do you feel, Jordan, that like what would happen if a bunch of La Leche leaders spoke up?
Well, I mean, how about just the fact that like never once have I, and I said this to Leah, never once have I been in a meeting where a woman has been like, oh man, you know what I really wish is that somehow I could just pump a ton of chemicals in my husband so that they can feed my child overnight. You know, we've always like joked like, oh, the man sleeping there with his useless nipples. I say that flippantly. Like never once have I been like, you know what, actually, if you could do this instead, that would be a lot better for me. Like, can you just figure that out so chemically you'd be able to feed our children? Just, it's not even a thought that has ever come into my mind. And we are going to face a lot of discomfort from women who are in these meetings. It's one thing to have a husband there who just like wants to understand different breastfeeding positions, how they can support their wife in this journey. It's a completely different thing for a man to lift up his shirt and say like, I've got nipples, Jack. Can you milk me? Like that's a totally, you know, for Meet the Parents, it's a very different thing. I also,
I love that reference.
as a milk donor, I had said this to you earlier, Leah, like I have, if I was inactive with my milk donations, I would have to go get my blood retested. I would have to do a very extensive psychological questionnaire. I had to have references about the type of lifestyle that I live. My milk was tested. That was just to be able to donate milk. The milk that I have given to women in the community, I've also wet nursed. Their first question is, what is your lifestyle like? What vaccines have you gotten? Have you gotten the COVID vaccine? Do you get the flu shot? All of those things. And so you're telling me that as someone who has to be put through the ringer for just to be able to donate my milk, we are now allowing a man to flush his body with tons of chemical, who even knows what's in those chemicals, so that we can be inclusive in language and meeting attendance to like the chemicals that would be in a man's body to be able to breastfeed. Yeah. I can't even imagine.
And we don't know anything really about the content of that milk. There's been, you know, research has come out that says, oh, male milk or, you know, parent milk, human milk is all the same, that there's no distinguishable difference between that. And I just find this so questionable. I can't instinctively there, every part of me as a lactation consultant that has worked with mothers, you know, feeding premature tiny little babies to women feeding 5-year-old plus babies, like we see the difference in the content of the milk. We see how our bodies adjust naturally to our babies with that bond. To think that a man's body that doesn't even have like sufficient mammary tissue would do something that is the same. Mm-hmm. I think we're just fooling ourselves. I think we're trying to make science match a narrative that we want society.
In decades since the beginning of time, pharmaceutical companies, drug companies, if they cannot replicate a formula that closely mimics mother's milk, do not tell me that magically they've been able to come up with something so that a man producing breast milk is even close to being comparable. It's not. It's a gift from God, and God made two genders, man, woman. The woman was designed to hold the child, deliver the child, breastfeed the child. The end. Period.
Yeah, it's an interesting moment in time.
I know we only have a few minutes with you, so we'll let you go. But if you could speak with the La Leche League board right here, right now, what would you want to tell them?
Well, succinctly, eloquently, kindly, we are the generation. I'm 38 years old. I have young children. I was around before Facebook and social media, and now I'm living in it every day. The 80-year-olds, the 70-year-olds, all of these people, you're not the generation of the organization. We are. And if you are willing to let go of the future of the generation who's put in the work, who's grown meetings from nothing to something, in a generation where people could just Google an answer, if we have done the work to get people to come together in this way, as was the original intent of La Leche, you're willing to throw that all away at the sake of just making a few people who are frankly confused feel better. It's time to step aside all of the people who are making these decisions. Let the people who understand the future, the true miraculous nature of breast milk, let them be on the board. Let them do the work with people who are like-minded, who understand the importance of what we're trying to accomplish. Like, your time is done. You've done it for decades and decades and decades. Move aside.
Wow, those are fighting words, Jordan.
I know. I'm probably going to get in a lot of trouble, but
yeah, I was going to say,
stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And there are people who, the facts are the facts. The facts are out there. The research is out there. The data is out there. You could change the language all you want. It doesn't take away from the fact that milk comes from a mother. It's the most beneficial, most nutritious thing that you can give to an infant. America, physiologically and societally, is the lowest in terms of how long they're breastfeeding their children. Physiological research has shown that breast milk composition changes up to 7 years old. That's why other countries are doing it, in villages. They're wet nursing their neighbors' children, their family's children. So I think leaders are starting to understand that there is a movement here, there's potential here, and we just have to work really hard to stay strong for what we know is right.
Well, you're very brave. I think if a movement's going to begin, you're going to start getting calls. You're either going to get asked to join the board or resign, one or the other.
That's right. That's right. Well, it'll certainly clear a lot of time on my plate if the latter.
Thank you, Jordan, so much for joining us today.
I'm grateful. Thanks for doing the hard work, ladies.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. God bless.
Oh, Leah.
I thought it was so important, Lisa, to bring on an actual Leche League leader, because like you said, or like she said, the letter almost got a little bit suppressed. Like, it kind of got hidden before it got picked up by some of the conservative right media. They kind of brought it forward. But it was really kind of being hidden. And I think the same thing is happening a little bit to some of these leaders, these Leche League leaders. Their voices are not breaking through for whatever reason. And I thought it's important because this movement of La Leche League is over 60 years old. It was founded in 1956. I mean, this is coming up on 70 years. There are still really good people involved. They just don't know how at this moment to influence their leadership.
So I want to kind of dig in a little bit to the root of the problem here, right? And you have a gender studies course at the University of St. Thomas in Houston, so this is a topic, like, what does this controversy reveal about the current state of women's healthcare in general?
Well, I think the point that you were just starting to make with your question is, what's happening to women here? What's actually happening is we're erasing women from the women's healthcare movement, quite frankly. And this has been happening for a long time. And I've been talking about this in related fields. Like, we see that we're erasing female fertility. We're erasing natural childbirth. We're erasing breastfeeding. We're removing women from the equation. I mean, we're even talking about babies not needing to be inserted into a womb, not needing to be grown in a woman, that we can have artificial incubators. I mean, these incredibly sacred, special parts about being a woman, we have been playing God with them and removing women from it for a long time. And why? Why? Like, that's really the question I have, is what is it about these things that's so threatening or so dangerous that we feel the need to just take this power away from women? Because it is a power that we have.
I don't know. I don't have the answer. I'm very, what she said, the need to sort of make a few people feel included.
Yeah.
And at the expense, for lack of other word, like at the expense of biological women. I don't understand. That's the question I'd be asking the board. I'd be asking the board, like, are we living in reality? Like, there is a biological reality to what a woman can do. And
the thing that's, Lisa, the thing that made La Leche League so special was that it was a group of 7 women at a church picnic back in 1955, breastfeeding their babies and looking around and realizing they were the only ones breastfeeding. and other women coming over and sitting down and saying, oh, my doctor told me it was too hard, I couldn't do it, so I'm on formula. So they were the only women really in their parish that were breastfeeding. The art was being lost. And that's what they realized at that moment was the best way for us to save this art was woman to woman, mother to mother led breastfeeding support. And a Leche League meeting has always been so special because you can go and sit down and watch other women nurse their babies. You nurse your baby, they help correct your position. It's this mother to mother, this sisterhood, this bond of like an unspoken like connection of like, I'm a woman, like we share this. And what you risk now in this new world, this brave new world where it's no longer the womanly art of breastfeeding, but it's, you know, the art of breastfeeding. We're literally removing women from the equation. You're risking that sort of trusting, sacred, safe space where we as women can connect with one another. And we're trying to just say that it's a human connection, that there's no reason you can't connect with a man in the same way you can connect with a woman. And that, like you said, is that reality? Well, no, I don't think it is reality. Like the reality is not all men are safe. Not all men deserve to be in these female only spaces. This makes us very vulnerable.
What do we do? You know, and this is a very like, I want to provide something concrete if we can here. You know, like if someone is a Leche League leader listening to this podcast, if someone similarly to us watch this unfold on the internet and had similar reactions of just sort of disbelief or confusion, like what do we do?
Well, I think, Lisa, I think what you and I are doing right now at Guiding Star in creating, you know, female safe spaces for health really is kind of a way of saying what we're doing, because we're creating, you know, places that honor where the norm for women's health is natural, unsuppressed, unchemically altered fertility, natural, you know, with no interventions, you know, natural childbirth, and breastfeeding, again, natural from a woman coming from a woman's breast. It's not a chemically induced lactation artificially. Like, I think trying to bring things back to the closest they were intended in nature and trying to optimize nature, working with Mother Nature, you know, if you want to go that, that's, I think, the best thing we can do right now is just re-normalize the natural female body and its processes. Like ovulation, not a disease. We should not be shutting it down. Childbirth, not a problem. This is something normal that we should be doing. And again, breastfeeding, this is something that is hard. You know, it's actually a difficult thing to do. And so some people say, this is totally not natural. It's not possible. Well, that's not true. Breastfeeding is natural. And it's something that we have to protect and really support women in doing. So creating these support networks, critical. That's a critical part of this process. For the Leche League leaders that are out there that are maybe listening to this, I know that you're there. I know that there's a group of you. It took me a little bit of time to find, you know, someone willing to speak on it. I had to do a little digging to get Jordan to come forward, because I know that a lot of you are probably nervous and scared potentially about, you know, having your head on the chopping block. But I would just say, look to Marian as your founder, as your leader. She bravely, at 94 years old, I mean, became an internet sensation with her resignation. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to do that.
I think it's so important that we raise our voices. This is something we talk about a lot at Guiding Star, like just to be an advocate for your own experience, to be an advocate for your own healthcare, be an advocate for how, you know, just you're treated in society, like literally be an advocate for yourself. And so our encouragement would be to speak up. Our encouragement would be to write the board. If you are a Leche League leader, and even if you're not, but I think this will become it will come from a very powerful place from Leche League leaders to hear from within the organization what they think about this particular issue. And so a very simple letter, I think, would be very helpful, but the strength is going to be in numbers. Yeah. A willingness to say, we believe that truth tells us that it is a biological reality that a woman can breastfeed, and these intimate spaces should be reserved for biological breastfeeding.
Yeah, I think something, Lisa, that caught me a little off guard, because I'm in the lactation world. So I want to ask you, when this happened with Marian Tompson's letter, were you surprised at the state of the Leche League? Were you surprised that this is like the reality? And I mean, you're in Guiding Star, so I guess maybe you're not the right person to ask, but do you think in general people were surprised?
I mean, I think so much of the world has changed the definition of what it means to be a woman. And so I was surprised in the sense that they've lasted this long. Like I was kind of like, wow, like it's only now that this is happening within their organization, because as we've seen in so many other disciplines, in so many other industries, in sports, in competitive ballroom dance, in in a myriad sports particularly, I think has gotten the most gender bathrooms, obviously. So again, I think the audience listening to this, is not going to be, this is not a surprise. We've seen such a shift in society. I think where I was caught off guard was like, like, wow, like they've actually lasted a long time without having some kind of challenge in their organization.
Well, and I think that actually is what surprised me, is that people weren't aware, because I applied to be a Leche League leader in 2008 prior to becoming a board certified lactation consultant. So I chose the route of IBCLC, and one of the pathways is to become a Leche League leader and then use all of your hours towards your certification and to sit your boards. And I remember interviewing in 2008 and meeting with my local leader in Duluth, and there were so many red flags going off for me already in 2008. And I opted not to do it because it was made clear that this was definitely a possibility, that I would, be fielding calls potentially from trans women that were wanting to breastfeed. And I just said, I have no experience or expertise with this. I could not help this person. There is nothing that I could do that would help them. Like, I don't think this is for me. And I think that's the reality of a lot of the leaders right now. They're really that mother to mother experience we can do. You don't need to be trained to do that. It's just showing another woman, here's the position I do, here's what I do. But you lose that as soon as it's a completely different, body that you're dealing with. I don't have the same parts. You don't have the same parts. How do we bridge this gap? And I couldn't. So I opted out in 2008. So I guess I was surprised that it took this long for it to hit the public eye. And I'm grateful that Marian did that. Like, I'm grateful to her for speaking up and doing that.
I think just this is why we're doing what we're doing here at Guiding Star. We're trying to, in my opinion, bring some logic. Like, to me, so much of this is simply logic. Is how were women created? And so then what kind of healthcare? You do a beautiful job in your book, Holistic Feminism. If anybody wants to explore where the history came from, like how did we as a society begin to blur the lines between men and women and what make us unique? You go into, beautifully several chapters of history and context. So anybody who would like further reading on this topic, I definitely recommend Leah's book. But it's just, there's just got to be a better way to do this.
Well, and I think what we did with Guiding Star, because when the organization was founded, roughly around 2010, when we founded this as a national organization, there wasn't enough awareness of the danger in terms of women truly losing safe spaces. And now, 15 years down the line, there's a lot more awareness. And so the approach that we took when we founded the organization was not so much to like ring alarm bells and be like, danger, danger. We took the approach more so of, this is beautiful and needs protection. Like, this is beautiful, this is beautiful, this is beautiful. So we're going to talk about how good your natural fertility is. And we're going to convince you that your natural fertility is the way to go. And we're going to convince you that natural childbirth is a possibility. And we're going to convince you that you can breastfeed. And so we've been taking a very invitational, hospitable, proactive. But in this moment in time, I feel like there's almost an awakening that's happened where we can say it's time to react with the solution. And I think we have the solution, Lisa. So I think we're ready.
Healthcare in line with women's natural bodies. That's the solution. Healthcare that is completely in line with a woman's natural female functions, and that is her ability to gestate. That is her ability to lactate. And that is her ability to, I'm missing one. What's the other one?
Ovulate, gestate, and lactate. Your 3 female superpowers.
And that's really it. We invite you, if you believe that this is also an approach that you'd like to see in America, please just continue the conversation. You can visit our website, guidingstarproject.com, where you can learn all about what we're doing. And we invite you to follow along, particularly at this moment as we are opening the doors. I'm flying to Tampa, Florida tomorrow to do some interior design work on the birth center that we are opening there in conjunction with our incredible group of women. Tammy Massoud, our midwife, who has been with us for many, many years. We are finally opening the doors on a Guiding Star Project birth center. So please follow along our adventures. There are many ways you can be involved. We've been getting some great emails of how people can be involved, like where there might not be a Guiding Star center. And so, just joining our Guiding Star Academy, we'll put the link for that below. Staying tuned in to what we're doing. But how else would you say, Leah, that if someone's hearing this and they're like, this is what I want, like what can someone do?
Well, you can consider opening a Guiding Star Center in your location, wherever you live. Contact us, talk to us. We're kind of selectively choosing the areas that we're bringing our centers to, but getting educated in whichever area of this really is resonating with you and becoming a leading voice is so helpful. If you are, you're a stay-at-home mom with a bunch of kids and you feel like, oh, there's nothing I can do, I guarantee there's something you can do. Like I guarantee either in your local community with your friends or keyboard warrior, there's something you can do. So just prayerfully take that, and sit with it and say, am I being called to speak right now? Because, this is one of those moments in time where we need a lot of voices and we need a lot of noise if we're going to change the trajectory of this. So, I think there's a lot you can do. It just kind of depends on who you are. If you're a nurse, obviously there's stuff you can do. If you're an educator, stuff you can do.
Wonderful. Leah, thank you so much. This was an invigorating conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Please send us a DM, leave a comment below wherever you're listening to this. Let us know what you think about this topic. And perhaps if we can suggest, write that letter to the Leche League board. Let your voice be heard. We've just recently signed our name to a women's health declaration. We want to encourage you to do something similar, like put your name out there that you stand for a healthcare in line with how a woman is naturally designed.
I've got one last thing. I want to invite you back next week for our podcast because we have another amazing guest lined up to talk a little bit more about women's protected spaces, not only in healthcare, but also in international policy. So you'll have Dr. Valerie Hudson joining us next week from Texas A&M University to speak, who also was a Leche League leader for 35 years. And she resigned last year in protest over the change in policies. So Dr. Hudson's going to be joining us next Monday to share about her experience a little bit in that organization and how at a certain point when you see something, you have to act. And she did.
Final thing we want to share with you is that this Thursday, follow our social channels very closely, Guiding Star Project on Instagram, because I'm going to be sharing on Give to the Max Day, that's this Thursday, November 21, a live, like in real time. I'm going to be in real time showing our revolutionary approach to healthcare, what that looks like in a space. So how do you educate on ovulation? How do you educate on gestation and provide that incredible care? The actual spaces where we are going to, facilitate the catching of babies. And then how do we wrap a woman around with all the support she needs in a center with things like childcare and the other ways that we can come together as a community. So I'm going to be doing that in real time in the space in Tampa, Florida, and we invite you to follow us along.
A little HGTV style, if I've heard correctly, Lisa. I heard a rumor that you're buying furniture while you're there.
Before and after, it's going to be so fun. And then, of course, to generously, if you can discern, to generously gift on Give to the Max Day, November 21. We want our organization, the Guiding Star Project, to climb the leaderboard. Like as we climb, more and more people learn about this vision for women's healthcare in line with a woman's natural design. And so every donation helps us to climb the ladder board, and become, one of the leaders in the Give MN event. So thank you so much for being here. We will see you next week for another conversation. We'll be back to our regular time of 11 a.m. East, 10 a.m. Central. Thank you so much for being part of A Fearless Future.